All right. Welcome everybody again to another version of 401 Conversations. I am Mike Neeley with Equity 401k Consultants, your owner and investment consultant here. And once again, I am joined by my partner in crime, the amazing third-party administrator from Nova 401k Associates, Mr. Thad Letzer. Thad, say hello to everybody.
Hey, Mike. Hey, everyone.
We're a lot quicker this time. So we are going to jump right in. And this is going to piggyback off our last conversation, Thad. For those of you that haven't watched yet, our prior video was on MEPs, PEPs, and group plan solutions and exchanges and all these fun new products that are out there in the 401k world these days. And we discussed last time about the big allure of PEPs and where the cost savings were. And for a lot of folks joining the PEPs, it was because they were subject to that annual large plan audit. And well, Thad, at the end of last month, and I just got notice about this this week from another plan that we were working on with a PEP, that they're no longer going to be subject to a large plan audit, not because they joined a PEP, but because the Department of Labor has changed how they're going to count folks for that large plan audit. So let's dive into that for a second. So it used to be under the old rules that it was your eligible participant count. So if you were over that 100 eligibles, right, you were subject to that large plan audit. Didn't matter if they were active or they had an account balance. If they were eligible, you got stuck with that bill every year. And now the Department of Labor has changed that. And so now the participant count is going to be based on the folks with account balances. Right. So that is really exciting news for some of these smaller businesses that had to, foot that big check every year to cover that cost. Now it seems the Department of Labor is giving some relief. You want to dive into that a little bit there, Thad?
Well, I mean, it's a very thoughtful respite for, think about, Mike, right? Restaurants, agriculture, manufacturing, any industry that tends to have a high employee count, but low participation. I mean, the former rules were crushing employers like that.
Absolutely.
Imagine having 10 or 20 participants in the plan, taking advantage of the plan, but as the employer having to bear this huge audit expense. And so finally, the Department of Labor, has done something great, really, for the businesses. Listen, they do a lot of great things. I mean, the whole PEP, opening up the PEPs and the group plan solutions, that's another really terrific advantage for employers. But to your point earlier, for a lot of employers, the advantage of joining a program like that was the audit relief. And so now this is audit relief 2.0, right, if you will.
Yeah.
So it's so timely. It's overdue, I'm sure, from a lot of plan sponsors' perspective.
Yeah. And, look, I think there's still going to be, obviously, large plans that have that participation count, with the folks that have account balance.
Yeah, of
They're
course.
still going to be subject to that. But to your point, for those types of businesses that were just getting crushed by having to write that $10,000 check every year, this is going to provide, I think, some much needed relief. I've talked to a few plan sponsors over the course of this year so far, and one of them was concerned if they had to continue to keep paying that high audit cost every year, they may have to shut the plan down because it was just too cost prohibitive. So hopefully this is going to bring some well-needed relief to those plans and help them continue to offer a benefit for their employees that will help them save for retirement and for the future. So, round of applause for the Department of Labor for finally,
for sure,
doing the right thing here. Okay, so that's our update. If you want to go back and learn about PEPs and MEPs, you can go back to that other video. And if you're subscribed to our 401 Conversations here, you can check that out on your own time on demand. So moving into some of what we really wanted to talk about today, the March 15th deadline for the ADP, ACP refunds, all that fun stuff has passed. That was March 15th. Thad, I'm sure you guys are getting some well-needed relief over there at Nova now that that has passed. How's things going based on that?
Well, I'm glad that deadline is in the rearview mirror. I know a lot of our account managers are as well. But during that crunch week is when you really see validation of what the IRS posts on its website as the 12 most common errors. We see a couple of those really popping their head up, specific to like definition of compensation. Making sure that plans use the right definition of compensation as eligible comp for plan purposes. Right. So are we going to do what's compensation? Is it just my W-2? Is it, or rather, do I include base salary? Do I include bonuses? Do I include commissions? Right. In that definition, how do I define eligible comp for plan purposes?
Right.
And so, if the sponsor's not paying attention to that during the plan year, we see situations where the sponsor is matching on bonuses. And it's only my key employees or my highly compensated employees that make bonuses.
Right.
And so by matching on the bonuses, when the plan document excludes bonuses from eligible compensation, and here I am matching on bonuses, in that instance, we find ACP test failures, right? Because we're giving too much money to certain groups of people in the demographic.
Yeah. And, it also, I think when we talk about, common errors, that one error stems from not following the plan document, right? So you're not following the definition of compensation that is laid out in your plan document. And I think, how do you avoid these things, in the future is you spend some time every year at some point, whether that's the midway point of the year or, towards the end of the year. And I know, some advisors will do it at the beginning of the year, every year with their plan sponsors they work with to help them review the plan document and make sure that it is current and it's meeting the needs of what you have for your plan. The plan document is that governing document. And if you're not following it, it's going to get caught. And this is where it gets caught. It gets caught at this time of year.
To your point, Mike, it's probably sage to maybe do a mid-year, right? Gosh, doing an annual plan review is so critical to catch stuff like this. Doing a mid-year review, would certainly catch that at least in the middle of the year, so you can sort of correct that situation before you start running into test failure issues by the end of the year.
Right. And then, you've got corrective distributions. Nobody's happy. They have to get money back. You get that money back. That money then is taxable in the year you got it back.
It is taxable in the year you receive it, right?
Yeah.
Not in the prior year for the plan year it counts for, but in the year you receive it.
Yeah. So that's not fun. And I know that when we're talking about corrective distributions, and again, going back to reviewing your compliance setup with your third-party administrative partners, making sure that, if you are having those corrective distributions, that you're working on solving those. So whether it's not following compensation or your highly comps are putting in too much because, the rank and file participants aren't contributing as much. Maybe mid-year, you're figuring out how to solve for that. And going into the next plan year, you're figuring out, should we be safe harbor? How can we help, get participation up so that we can help our highly comps if we can't do safe harbor? And maybe even adding automatic enrollment, right? As much as there could be pushbacks from the rank and file, one way that you get participation up is automatic enrollment, right?
Yep. One other thing that we saw, which is sort of in the same conversation as we kind of see the foibles of not doing an annual plan review as it pops up at the end of the year. Other plan provisions like last day requirements on employer contributions, right? We have, and we see this on some documents that we take over middle of the year that, we're already written and we can't amend them till the following year, but a last day requirement. We see employers that are surprised that they have got to give John or Jane a match or they're entitled to a non-elective discretionary profit sharing contribution when they left the company in August. Why do I owe this person $800 in a contribution? And it's because their plan document didn't have a last day requirement. So, there's no right or wrong answer there, but, it's really important that the sponsor understands what their document says. A lot of times in a startup plan, they get a really turnkey solution and here's your plan document, you're ready to go. And there's not a lot of consultation on the front end of that thing. So a lot of times sponsors don't really know what's in their document. So, doing an annual plan review like you're suggesting, Mike, helps sponsors understand what their plan says.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, it's critical, especially if you're also changing, HR people, right?
Yeah.
So
For sure.
you're hiring on a new
Totally.
HR person. They don't know what's in the plan document.
Yeah.
And so you've got to really, I think, make sure that you're getting everybody who is going to be interacting with your plan at the business, make sure that they understand what those provisions are and how the plan is set up.
It's like you said in these previous calls, it's about a process, right?
Yes.
So if you have that new HR person, get in there and, get them up to speed real quick on how the plan operates, because it's probably not the same as it operated at their prior company, right?
We said this in the last one too, is that every business and their specific plan is going to be unique to them. It's not a boilerplate, plan document that every plan has. Well, there might be some similarities in provisions. Again, if we look at the compensation setup that you're talking about, different companies are going to have different definitions of compensation and what they can do and what they can't do. So
Typically.
Again, important. Have that process in place. Just like doing a plan benchmark every 2-3 years, doing an annual plan review that includes your compliance and plan document review is highly important. And that brings up one last thing as we wrap this up is this is the time of year too, where we start to see common red flags that will pop up on the 5500 filing. Most commonly, I think we see it all the time, is that we don't have enough fidelity bond coverage for the plan, right? Because you bought the coverage either at the beginning of the plan and you've only upped it, every couple of years. Well, you're basically telling the Department of Labor and the IRS, hi, we have, a red flag here that we're not taking care of stuff. We may not be taking care of other things too, especially with something as simple as that. And I know for a fact that if you have a good third-party administrator partner, they'll make sure and they'll help with making sure that fidelity bond coverage is up to date. And like you mentioned before, you can buy coverage that goes up, every so often, every year or so. So that's common stuff. And as we, are going to get ready to wrap up, annual testing and all this fun stuff, and folks are going to go through for a lot of plans. As we said at the beginning, this is going to be the last time they have to go through an audit because they're going to only be audited for the 2022 plan year, no longer going forward. This is the time of year that we see things that fly under the radar all year because, processes and reviews aren't in place.
Yeah.
Well, Thad, appreciate the time as always. Again, things are always changing.
Yeah.
Just like we got Secure 2.0 at the end of last year, then we got this regulatory change right smack dab at the end of February. So lots of things always ever changing. And
always in motion.
I'm going to say, for those of you that are watching, our next installment of 401 Conversation should be fun because Thad will be coming back from Napa. So he should have plenty of information. Thad, real quick, you want to tell everybody who's not familiar with Napa what it is?
There are a couple of leading industry organizations in the retirement plan space, and Napa is an organization that brings all the stakeholders in the industry together to meet and consult and discuss and exchange ideas around the current retirement plan landscape from a compliance standpoint, plan design standpoint, really all the things that record keepers, administrators, advisors in the retirement plan space should be aware of. There's lots of great conversations that get had at this multi-day conference. So I'm excited to hear sort of what the best minds in the industry are thinking about and where the industry is headed.
For sure. And we'll be looking forward to getting the updates from you about all of that stuff when you get back. So,
Mike, I also want to talk about on one of our calls, we should talk about M&As, companies that are in that space where they're acquiring other entities or being acquired, and, how that sort of activity impacts plans, and how sometimes purchase agreements get overlooked and the fate of one's retirement plan, isn't considered in that activity, and the perils of not thinking about that stuff.
Yep, that can be another whole 401 conversation.
It's a tease for another one.
Lots of these to have. So
Sure.
Everybody, thank you again. As always, we appreciate you. As I said last time, listening to two guys babble about 401k plans and regulations and all that fun stuff. We hope that you are finding value in these, because that's the only reason that we do them, is to make sure that we get you the information and it is of value to you. My contact information, as always, will be at the end of this video, and you can always reach out to me here if you have questions, and I can always relay things over to Thad, or you can reach over to Thad at Nova 401k Associates as well. So Thad, thank you again for the time, and we will see you on the next 401 conversation.